My name is Sam Spiegelman, On3 National Recruiting Analyst, and you are watching the FanvVew podcast.
Y'all already know what it is. Another episode, FanvVew podcast.
The FanvVew podcast.
Ooh, you sound like Ohio State over there. I say, I can't do it.
The FanvView podcast. Man. Come on,
You
man.
sound like them Buckeyes over there. I'm a Wolverine fan, G-Sportz. Can't do it. Y'all already know this. The FanvView podcast. Listen, I'm that boy Fred.
G-Sportz back at it.
Y'all already know what it is. Listen, get subscribed. FanvView Podcast if you on IG. It's FanvView Podcast if you on YouTube. It is FanvView NOLA if you are on Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to G-Sportz. I can't help you if you underneath the rock. We all got social platforms, baby. We all have TikTok. We all have IG. We all got Twitter now. We all got Facebook. I got to keep y'all locked and loaded, baby. But y'all get locked in, get subscribed, and don't forget New Orleans. Thank y'all for New Orleans Talk Network for sponsoring the podcast.
No
If
doubt.
y'all in the market to get your next podcast film, start a podcast, don't forget to subscribe to New Orleans Talk Network. Trust me. But G-Sportz, we got a special guest in the building.
Man, we got one of the hardest working men in the business, man.
Yes.
National recruiting analyst from On3 Sports Sam Spiegelman in the building. Glad to get him on the FanvView podcast, man. I know you've been working your ass off since last spring to now, man. With recruiting, football season is upon us.
Yes.
The week one of the regular season starts tomorrow. I know you're back and forth between Texas and Louisiana. Glad to have you on the podcast, Sam. I know there's a lot of things you could be doing, but for you to come fellowship with us, man, and kind of give us your expertise on what's going on in the football world and recruiting, we deeply appreciate it. But we like to start our podcast off, man, talking about your journey. Sam, I think I probably met you maybe 6-7 years ago when I first got into the media game, and you were somebody I watched closely just by how professional you are and how you go about your business and what you was doing with Rivals at the time. But take us back, man. You know, what got you into journalism, man? What got you so passionate about what you do, and how have you elevated, so fast in a short amount of time?
Sheesh.
Man, well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and
Yeah.
like I said, when G hit me up, I was like, man, dude, I was telling my wife, I was like, we gotta change out our plan. I gotta get you to the airport. I'm doing this, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
But yeah,
Thank you.
Me and G go way back, and
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here with you guys. You guys do a great job. Yeah, I grew up. My older sister was kind of like my idol growing up. Your siblings are who you look up to, and she wanted to be the editor of the newspapers. I was like, oh, that sounds like cool, but I kind of only really like sports. That was the only thing that interested me.
Right.
So from high school to college, I grew up. I wanted to be a sports writer. I didn't know what that meant. I thought I'd be covering.
So, and how old were you when you started feeling like this?
Oh man, 12, 13 years
Damn,
old,
you knew
14.
that early?
Yeah. I mean, listen, you are the
Time picking Yunes days, brother.
yeah, influenced by my sibling. I exposed to only what she was exposed to.
Right.
And my only thing that differed me was that I like sports. I remember I did like a full front page recap of the Giants winning the Super Bowl when Eli beat the Patriots, and to me that's what I thought I was gonna do for forever. But when I was in college, I went to the University of Maryland. I went to go cover Stephon Gilmore. Excuse me. Excuse me. Stephon Diggs.
Stephon Diggs.
At Gilmore. At his high school Gilmore.
Right.
And man, that changed out the energy. I mean, that was out in D.C., in the Baltimore area, in the Maryland area. And where I grew up on Long Island, New York, no one came to my football games growing up except for my mom and dad.
Right.
To
Football
see.
not really talked about in New York.
Yeah,
No.
but basketball. But if you get to Rucker Park, we talk about basketball.
Yeah, it's a basketball.
Freestyle, yeah.
Basketball, lacrosse.
Right.
Football is just not a part of the culture there. And when I was in DC, it blew my mind away. One, to see someone like Stephon Diggs as a high schooler.
I've heard he was lights out. Not just in
You
high
know
school,
what?
but
If we
lights
saw
out.
him today, we'd be raving about him in the same light we talk about these same 5 stars right now, because that's exactly what he was.
Definitely out here.
And that's what kind of captured me in. I was like, you know what? the thing about high school, is the thing I also learned in that journalism class, is you always get to talk, when you talk about kids, you're talking about them in a positive light,
Right.
which is great because real journalism can be real hard.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're talking
'Cause
about
you gotta be
kids.
critical. You got to be critical.
You have to be critical, but there's always a positive light.
Right.
You're talking about kids, and in recruiting, like, which I fell into, and I'll get into that in a sec. It's a lot of different ways to do it. You can kind of make it your own, which I appreciate you saying that earlier. I try to go about things my own way. So I got a job with the Times-Picayune. I moved to New Orleans in 2012.
So what led you to moving from the East Coast to the South, though? What made you step out on faith like that?
The woman. Gotta be a woman.
Oh, that's my wife.
I told
That's
you.
my wife.
Told
Yeah.
you.
But I met with Marcus Carmouche of the Times-Picayune, and I told him what I did, what I wanted to do, and he said, "Give it time." And a month later, he called me. I got in my car. I drove here in 2012. Started working with incredible people like Jimmy Smith and Jarrett Roser and Andrew Lopez, who's now covering the NBA for ESPN. Like, give me a break. Like,
I remember when I first started off covering the state championships for basketball, and he was covering the state championships, and then to see him elevating the game, and now seeing him on ESPN and covering the Pelicans, man, it's a testament to his hard work too.
And the way that him and Jared and Jimmy did recruiting, they said, "Hey, would you want to do some stories like this?" I said, "Heck, yeah."
Right.
I did stories on Booga, and Speedy. Cy Martin, I remember, from Tulane to an LSU offer. We've had some crazy stories in this incredible city. And then I got laid off. I got a job covering the LSU beat for a startup called SEC Country.
I remember that.
Yep.
I remember that.
And they said, hey, you don't have to just do LSU. You could just kind of cover the state. And I was like,
okay.
Great. That's how I ran into guys like Greg Brooks, who was just named captain of LSU. A 3-star, a little bit under-recruited because of his size, but had an NFL pedigree, was a continual playmaker, offense, defense, special teams at West Jeff. And then when he signed at Arkansas, you were like, okay, maybe I can do this recruiting stuff at maybe a higher clip. I think I know what I'm looking for by now. And I'm very fortunate from there. They got an opportunity at Rivals. And then I guess
that's where I remember you from. I remember Sam from Rivals.
Right.
Yeah.
I knew Sam put his stamp on that Rival. I was like, man, listen, whatever Sam got to say. Hey,
the one last hurdle I had to get over, I did get laid off from SEC Country one second time. And that, it just gives you a lot of experience. What the media game is it's tough.
It's
and
tough. It's ever changing.
It's ever changing.
That's an incredible way to put it. And it's unforgiving. No matter how hard you work, sometimes it's, we're talking about recruiting. Sometimes it feels like you're doing it in the dark and no one's even looking at you.
Yeah.
So, got caught on with Rivals. That turned into On3 about 5 or 6 years later. And I'm just blessed to be where I am. And I get to cover kids that play football for a living. And like G said, the best part about it now is football season's here.
Yeah. So the guy that started Rivals, sold Rivals, and started On3, correct?
Correct. Shannon Terry.
Gotcha.
And On3 has become a major platform
in a short amount of time.
In a short amount of time.
Short
in terms
amount
of people being connected, people getting information about recruits and things that are going on with different players. Man, talk about the experience of people being with On3 and how fast you've grown in this business with On3.
Yeah, I think August might have been our 2-year anniversary.
Right.
We're still a baby. We're a startup.
Pioneer stage.
Yes.
But I'll tell you what, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot faster of a work environment. But this is kind of this is as close to being a journalist, I feel like, as I've ever gotten to be in my career, because talking to G before, I talk to G about this every time we're on the sideline. Recruiting is wild, and the people that you meet and people that are involved in these recruitments, whether they're a coach that's in the mix for a 5-star player, or just a coach from the outside that's at Southern who's maybe getting an opportunity at UL that in 5 years could be the director of recruiting at Houston. You have no idea how these things work out.
No idea.
So the biggest thing is relationships, and like I said, this new role at On3 has been great because I get to form a lot of new relationships with people I've always either wanted to work with or never had a chance to. I've gotten to meet a lot of new people or kind of rekindle some relationships, and now I feel like I'm a professional like detective in the world of recruiting for On3, which is pretty fun.
Well, I do want to ask you a question. I know G gonna have a lot of questions. I'll answer this question. It's important to me. Growing up as a kid, right? Journalism was a very important thing. Like when you see somebody put content out there who's a journalist, it's like it was law, it was credible. Everybody want to be content creators now. how hard it is for you to navigate being a journalist in this content creating. Again, we're creating content, but in this content generation age where you still have to stick out like a sore thumb as a journalist, where everybody out here got opinions. Now, at one point in time, everybody didn't have an opinion. We're looking inside the newspaper. This is the beat writer. This is the guy who's the journalist. That's what it is.
Twitter created it.
Yeah, killed everything. but
what? X. I'm sorry.
X.
Now,
the artist formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There you go. I like how you put that. But how hard it is now to still maintain being a journalist in this social media era.
Well, G said it before, and G knows that I can get angry about things too, because you're right. You don't need to you don't have to have a journalism degree or say that I work for the Times-Picayune to break news. It's about journalism is about relationships,
for real.
And it's about credibility, and that's the second part of it. And you don't need to show your degree or say who you spoke to at the door to break news or provide valuable intel.
Right.
The thing about it is trying to decipher who is trustworthy, who is a trustworthy source, and with platforms, everyone has a way to put their thoughts out there.
Right.
How do you distinguish like who I trust and where, and are they someone that's led me in the wrong way before? Is it someone that talks to people that are in the know, or do they present things in a fair and equitable way that's telling? And I think those are, like you said, it's really difficult because usually we would rely on a blue check mark or the beat writer to be like, hey, this is how it is, but it's not. If everything was as cookie cutter and clean as that, then we'd be living in a different world.
Yep. Right.
To me, it's all about credibility and it's all about accountability.
And I just, as a person who follows a lot of media guys and a lot of media people, whether it's on social platforms or what have you, man, it's just becoming tough because everybody's trying to rush to be first, to get information, to get news out, whether it's correct or not, whether all the details are right or not. Everybody's in a rush to be first, and it just makes it tough today to be a real journalist because while you're doing the research and trying to get the facts done properly, somebody's just putting out information.
Yep.
Right. And you may come as the fifth or sixth story who breaks this now, but no one's looking at you. But you got the facts.
Right.
You got the truth.
Facts.
And it makes it tough for your job because people out there putting out information about something unconfirmed just to be first, just to get people to click. But the journalist is taking the time to do the real work. And at one point in time, it was only the journalist doing the work. So then when it came out, it was like, okay, we got the news. It probably happened 2 or 3 days ago, but the facts it did not is breaking. Now you hit news now in 20 minutes. And you're like, come on, man. We're in that kind of age now, and there's a part of me who, maybe I'm a little older man now, I don't like it. It bothers me.
And Fred, you make a key point when you talk about that dynamic of media and journalism. I know for myself, it's been plenty of time where I've had people tell me certain things for as who a kid's about to commit to or who their top school is, whatever it might have been, right? And I ain't gonna say a lot of the time, half of the time, I'm skeptical of putting it out.
Yep.
Because I don't know if it's real truthful or not. You
can't confirm it.
Yeah, and there have been times where it has been true.
Yep.
But it also have had times where it wasn't true. And I'm glad
they put it out.
Because now you're killing your credibility. And one thing I pride myself on, and is trying to be as professional as I can. And part of that is making sure that your content and what you're putting out is concrete and it's facts behind it. A lot of time when I do break something, if I it's not a whole lot because I like to get it from the horse's mouth.
Correct.
Either the parent, the kid, or the head coach.
Correct.
I don't like getting it from cousins and people they're friends with because things are changing. Sometimes people they blow smoke to other people.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to be that guy where people say, "Man, G be putting this out, but it don't always be accurate." And so that's a key point you made. But I kind of want to go back to something that Sam said. Man, you talked about how you got laid off twice in your journalism career, and as we know, man, no matter what you're doing, whether you're playing football in the NFL, you're getting cut, whether you're trying to be a lawyer, a doctor, whatever, we go through some adversity and some hurdles in our careers. Talk about staying motivated, man, and want to stay in journalism and not let those layoffs discourage you and go take another career path.
Yeah, there were definitely a lot of times where I did think about taking another career path. My first time I got laid off, I was a kid. I was still young. And I was like, maybe I should go, I live in New Orleans. Maybe I should try to go to Tulane Law or something that's a little bit more stable. I can make more money. I mean,
Whew.
journalism might be fun,
Right.
but it's certainly not the most lucrative career. Even if you are at the best of your game, and there are people that are high on the chain that I don't think make enough the same amount of money in the same
No doubt.
pay range as high priced
Correct.
attorneys. Like, trust me. So it was definitely trying. I remember I talked to my dad a lot of times about trying something new, but like I said, I grew up. I was kind of focused. I was kind of only driven toward writing about sports and somehow putting my taste on it for whatever
Right.
it was worth. I was a stupid kid that just happened to have a passion for it, but I always felt like just talking to my friends or talking to I always felt like when we have a discussion, I'm like,
Yeah.
this is like, isn't this like a good conversation?
Yeah.
Like, that's
Right.
how I felt when I was a kid, and I felt that way till now at 33 years old. um so I gave it another shot, and when there were times where I was writing for 5 or 6 or 7 different places at the same time, just trying to just get money. I had to pay my bills, and I had to try to I talked about my wife. Well, she was my girlfriend back then, and she certainly doesn't have cheap taste. So I'm trying to impress her and keep her interested in me. And I work Friday nights and Saturdays.
Yup.
I like not a great catch, to be perfectly honest with you. But I think it's if you don't I don't want to say if you don't know anything, if you're driven and you really believe, you have to give things at least second chances. I mean, I believe in
Yes.
third and fourth chances. Again, ask my significant other. You get as many chances as you want. You have to believe in second chances at
Correct.
least. And then I'll tell you this, when I got laid off the second time, it came within 3 weeks of me closing on my first house
Damn.
and proposing to that aforementioned wife.
Whew.
And it happened. I got the news in Baltimore, with my in-laws, my future in-laws, and I was real. My father-in-law is a former Navy man.
Stern.
Yeah,
Discipline.
it wasn't about to be a great conversation.
Discipline
Um,
man.
But you know what? At that point in my career, after multiple stints, of trying new things and kind of establishing some credibility, maybe not a lot, but some people knew who I
Who
was.
you were.
So dope.
I felt that I would have a chance to at least continue, at least in this field, and each step, would elevate you to the next. And no longer was I at the bottom of the ladder anymore, just trying to hold on. I was at least somewhere in the middle where I had a fighting chance to at least continue my career. And I thought, at least so far, at least I've climbed at least another ladder to make it to another profession. Cross your fingers.
Right.
But if it certainly had its trials and tribulations, to put it lightly.
I have a real appreciation for what you just said, and I asked that for a reason because the times that we're living in, everybody think whatever career you choose that you're gonna have this overnight success. We live in a microwave society, and
Facts.
nobody wants to go through the adversity and the trials and tribulations that come with a career like journalism or whatever it is that
Whatever
you're
it may
doing
be.
with your life.
Whatever
It
may be.
just comes with a level of adversity that's going to come. And it's not what you go through, it's how you handle it when you're going through
And
it. I think
everyone-
that was an excellent way you just put that, Sam.
And not
Appreciate
just,
you.
not just that, but people think that because you branded yourself and you become a brand name in recruiting, people think your role was just straight. People thought your role was like this. And it
Everybody
wasn't.
posting their success, nobody posting their failures.
Preach.
Tell
And so everyone thought your role was just this. When reality, the role was pum, 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 pum. And no one got the chance to see that or witness that. But all they see now is the outcome. They see the results. But they didn't really see you behind closed doors. You basically shooting in the gym. You putting the hard work and the hours in. They didn't see you up being 2 in the morning, studying this, studying that, doing everything it takes to be what you become. And all they think everything is given. I said, dog, things are earned, man.
How to earn it.
Things are earned. And I just think that we live in such a like a G alluded. There's such a microwave society that everyone's looking to be some overnight success in whatever occupation they're in. And it don't work. We see that in recruits.
Yeah.
They think that, okay, I can go out here on Friday nights when the lights are on and go out here and just turn it on. Brother, you wouldn't getting it in at practice.
Right.
Or in the summer,
Or in the summer. Or in the off season.
Or Monday through Thursday leading into Friday.
Yep.
You wasn't getting it in.
Yeah.
And thinking because Friday night you did it one game, I could do it again. Or you keep cheating yourself. Keep doing it. Keep trying.
Right.
This not how it works. You're going to run against some kids who trying to get where you are. You may be a 4 or 5-star recruit. You got a 3-star kid trying to make a name for himself who been putting the work in, and you haven't. He about to show you up on this Friday night. And all of a sudden, you looking at, I ain't commit. Well, he about to.
Right. Right. I know a lot of kids and parents ask me this question often. As it pertains to On3, Rivals, 24/7 Sports, ESPN. One of the first things kids like to ask me, especially early on in their career when they're first getting into high school, is how do I become a 4-star? How do I become a 5-star? How do I get ranked? And I try to give them as much information as I can to the best of my ability. But the fact of the matter is, it's that's not my realm when it comes to figuring out who's going to be the number 1 player in the state for On3 or 24/7 Sports or what have you.
Right.
For as long as you've been doing this, Sam, what's your process, or as a whole, whether when you was a Rivals or now with On3, what is your process when it comes to trying to figure out who's going to be a 4-star, who's going to be a 5-star, and how should we rank these certain kids?
So that is a loaded question, but I'm trying to break it down as much as I can. So first of all, at On3, at Rivals, I was the guy who put stars on everyone, whether they signed with UL, Grambling, or Georgia and Alabama.
Right.
Okay.
Now I am just part of the machine. I am out there Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays as often as I can, and my input, it has sway. But I am not a final decision maker anymore. So let's put that out there.
Okay.
First off, that's only for company guidelines.
Right.
Let's first talk about, how do I become a 3-star? How do I become a 5-star? It all begins with exposure, and G knows this as well. Everyone wants to start their varsity career as a freshman and start getting 15 offers and and if the world worked like that, it'd be so easy.
Everybody would become an anomaly.
So many parents would be happier. We'd all be sleeping later in the morning. It'd be great.
Right.
First of all, every recruit, but every varsity player who gets recruited rather has a different process. We're talking about Dominic McKinley before this. Well, his recruitment really didn't start till after his junior season, which is more of a is more of a traditional pace. Then you have guys like Derek Stingley Jr., the number 1 player in the state and in the country, Jakeem Stewart, who have 20 offers before they play a varsity down of football. Every situation is different, and it doesn't mean that there's a right way or a wrong way. It just means that it's different. So in terms of exposure, if you had a breakout sophomore season and you're trying to get ranked, likely if you have varsity film, it's about your exposure. If you have varsity film, coaches are going to be contacting you if you're a playmaking sophomore. If coaches are contacting you, that means your high school coaches are actively contacting them, and people are going to try to get you to campus, and we're going to get buzz of you naturally. It just happens organically.
Correct.
You can go to camps. First of all, like you said, I'm at games every single week. G is at games every single week. If you are the best player on that field and there is someone with a camera there, all it takes is a cell phone there, it's going to get on the internet. And if you do it often enough, more people are going to come to your games. You're going to be in the paper, and people are going to hear about you.
Right.
That also happens. And then there's the exposure side. You can go out of your way to make sure that people see you. I mean, On3 doesn't hold camps, but Rivals holds camps. Under Armour holds camps.
Yep.
Nike had camps for a while. There's an array of different ways. Colleges have camps.
College has camps. I'm about to say, you go to Tulane, LSU camp.
And the great thing about the state of Louisiana is under Ed Orgeron, they started to work all together. So UL and La Tech and Tulane and Fritz and Brian Kelly and Frank Wilson, they're all in the same venue about 4 or 5 or 6 times between, I think it's May 31st usually for Tulane until the last camp at LSU. And they all... If you get an offer, I guarantee people are going to eventually get you ranked.
Yep.
Now, here's the thing that kids also fail to realize, and I get it, they're kids. I might live in Louisiana, but that does not mean that it's like I can get everyone in the state ranked, overnight. Like sometimes we might have seen you in a camp. We want to get your measurements. We want to see how your varsity film looks. Sometimes there's just a waiting order that there's no rankings that are made until after your junior season. And, maybe you're just like 4 games in. We have to just wait for the other 6 before we do the entire cycle.
No doubt.
So sometimes kids take it personally, and more often than not, it is never personal. It's more about taking the time to do it for every kid in Louisiana, every kid in Mississippi, every kid in California, so on and so forth. As far as the actual ranking system, what makes a 5-star prospect? Well,
Because there's only 32 in the country.
there's only 32.
Yeah, dude.
So the ranking system, and this is why a 3-star prospect is an impressive feat, is because that means it's a Power 5 grade, it's a draftable grade.
Gotcha.
A 4-star means that you're probably looking at the second round, a third round, fourth, ish, or you're on the fence of that 5-star ranking. There's a lot of 4-stars in the country. Those are extremely great players, and then those 5-stars represent at most 32 potential first-round picks. So we are saying these are either the best 32 players in high school football, or in some cases the guys who have checked this, and all the pre-qualifications of a parent pedigree, multiple sport athlete, incredible testing numbers. You could have measured in with a freaky wingspan, or or you're just one hell of a football player and no one can stop you on Friday nights. And then you did it most importantly as a senior eval. That's the last thing before I hand it back to you guys is if you get ranked as a sophomore and you don't like it. It's a big deal if you get ranked.
No doubt.
You don't like
Thank you.
Yeah. And if you don't like your ranking, usually there's only one person in the country who ever likes their ranking. If you're just content to be a 4-star, that's probably the first sign that something is wrong. You should all these kids should be striving to be the number one player at their position or in the country at that point. So the 5-stars, there's a lot that goes into it, and the cool thing about the recruiting process, or at least the evaluation side, is it evolves almost monthly from the time you first get ranked until the time you sign, and that's a lot of time to either move up, to move down, or stay stable. But usually that trajectory tells you about the kid. If someone who starts at 50 ends up at 1, it's a pretty steady flow. But it might tell you a lot of someone who starts as unranked until they're going into their senior season and then ends up at 80 in the country, like Quincy Wiggins.
Yeah.
That might tell you a lot about that athlete too.
Yep. I think that one of the things with these kids, and they I ain't gonna say they don't idolize these anchors, but obviously even as a kid, you pay attention to who the 5-star kids was. But I think a lot of kids' misperception of being a 5-star is that all because you are not a 5-star doesn't mean that you're not a good player. I think a lot of kids get this mindset that if you're not a 5-star, if you're not a 4-star, that you're undervalued. And I think it's a big cliche.
It's a myth.
So there's a lot of players who are 3-star prospects, come out of high school, go to college, put on a show, go in there, compete. I just think kids just have a misunderstanding of the interpretation of ranking. All because you're 3-star doesn't mean that you're not better than the 5-star. The 5-star just may have the measurables and they might have more exposures. It doesn't mean that you can't outcompete them. I just think a lot of kids get this misconception.
You ever hear Brian Kelly say, "Look at our 4-star cornerback freshman starting"? As soon as you get to college,
it doesn't.
First of all, when college coaches recruit you, they don't say we want you because you're a 5-star. Like they're going to tell you why they want you, and it's easier said than done because we're all 30 plus and we're all adult men.
Right.
We're adults, and when you're 15 or 16 or 17, it's hard to internalize what this means. But if a coach views you as a first-round pick or sees the future in you, then you should be talking to that coach. And if you're upset with your ranking, that's another issue to be dealt with, because what that coach knows more than anyone ranking from a media standpoint. I'm perfectly comfortable saying that out loud. And if it should never be I'm so concerned with I'm only a 3-star, because like I said, 3-star means draftable, it means Power 5 potential, and dozens, thousands, you can name countless that have outproven the ranking. It is just a ranking, and when it starts to be no one's competing for rankings. You're competing to win on Friday night. So I always tell kids, worry about the ultimate goals, about winning a state championship, improving your craft, and getting to college. And then let's have this conversation. And if you're still unhappy, then we can talk about it. And I would say 9 out of 10 kids never really bring it up again. And the kids that do often don't really pan out.
Yep. Now, a lot of college coaches say, when they get in these press conferences, that they don't pay attention to the rankings, that they don't pay attention to the...
Don't listen to them lies. I swear they all lies.
Right. But Sam, we know better. We know better, right? How much do you think these college coaches do pay attention to these rankings from On3, from 24/7 Sports, from ESPN?
Well, especially once they get them committed, they really care. I can, people that I respect a ton fight with me a lot about rankings, and People like literally, the people I'm thinking about in my head are some of the coaches that I would call right now if I wanted an eval on a player, an unbiased opinion. At the same time, I've also heard these people, because they are still human beings, admit that they are wrong. I've also
Yep.
heard, what did we start this about with the stars? If you saw an eval of a kid as a junior, playing, let's say, I went to Carr as a junior, and I saw Teron Francis, and I said, man, that kid dropped 3 passes. A little bit trouble getting out of his breaks when he went against Wallace Foster. Couldn't get a release, and all the hype that Bryce gave me. It sounds like maybe Bryce has just hyped him up a little bit. Come on, and you saw that that's a 1 game sample
One-game
size.
sample
You
size.
can be wrong. Because we both know Teron Francis is a different level caliber receiver. If anyone listening at home, I think the world of the kid. I think he's wide receiver 1 in the state for next year. It just goes to show you,
DK Metcalf.
yeah, kids develop. They are still children, and they're student athletes developing at their own clip.
Correct.
And these are college coaches. They might go to 1 game, or they really have people under them watching the tape every single week. They have a lot on their plates to be following, every single week what a kid is doing in and out. So when they start to maybe get a little bit more defensive. Now, I understand that it's because in their building they view the kid higher. It's the same way in 32 NFL draft rooms in April or May.
Right.
They might have viewed, Bryce Young as a number 1 quarterback, and some might have viewed Anthony Richardson or C.J. Stroud. It's all about your taste.
Yep. And I think too, sometimes you got kids that go to camps and they're not good camp kids.
Correct.
Right?
Definitely.
Some kids, they're better when the lights is on, with the pads on, 11 on 11.
Right. They're not 7-on-7.
Right. I've seen that.
Or individual drills.
I've seen kids that can really go, that can really play when you see them on Friday nights. You put them in a camp setting, they look like a shell of themselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that could influence people on what they think about certain kids too, because a lot of the time, let's be honest, if it's a kid way up north that go to Ruston High School, right?
Right.
9 times out of 10, I'm not going to see that kid play in person unless I see him at a camp.
Or a state championship.
Or they play a playoff game down here, right?
Correct.
So if I see him on just watching film, and I'm like, man, this kid could go, he could play.
Yeah.
Right? Then I see him at a camp, and he don't look the same as he do on film.
Right.
Now, and this is just me, I'm not going to just go off that camp experience and say, oh, man, that kid ain't good. I got enough sense to know that some kids just not camp kids. Some, you don't know. He might have went to 3 camps that week and his body might be worn down. You just don't know what has came into play. And I think that's another thing that people needs to take into consideration. Like you said, you go see somebody play one time, they're kids. Some of them going to have up and down games. Some of them not going to have a level of consistency at this age, right? And I think that's what we got to do a better job of, as media people, that we put it out, that content out there, and let people know, look, yeah, he might have had a bad game this game, but I've been following this kid for the last year and a half. I've seen him be a playmaker more often than not.
Right. Not just that, but, let's go back to these rankings for 2 seconds. You didn't let you off the hook that fast, Sam. Listen, a lot of people jobs on the line when it comes to these rankings. You know how we go out there trying to recruit kids.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these Power 5 schools, they got boosters, they got people, they got fans, they got people who said, man, we ain't getting enough 5-stars in the building.
Yeah.
And if we can't land some 5-stars around here, what kind of head coach we got? What kind of guy who building these relationships? So how did that all work? Because at the end of the day, you got a lot of programs, these Power 5 programs, these big business programs, if they got a whole list of recruits, and they got a bunch of 4 stars and 3 stars, and they got this 3 and 4 years straight, jobs coming, especially if the program is underachieving.
Right.
Sometimes these rankings can sway people's livelihoods.
Especially the boosters. The boosters,
man.
they definitely pay attention to the rankings and the
they pay
stars.
more attention to the rankings than anybody in the world.
Yes.
Well, at that same point, you're right. If you're only recruiting 4 stars and 3 stars, you can go 2 ways. One, you're underachieving. You're upsetting a lot of people upstairs that are making decisions.
Of course.
Or you have a chance to prove something. I get a bunch of 3 stars that's a media ranking that turn into Power 5 studs that get drafted.
Yep.
You turn 4 stars and 3 stars. Like I said, those are good players. Under the right coaching and the right development, that changes your recruiting. I think about, obviously I'm Louisiana centric, but I think about guys that have been 3 stars that have come under that less. Racey McMath
Racey.
was a 3-star.
DJ Shark was 3-star.
DJ Chark was a 3-star, and those guys are playing in the NFL right now.
Starting
in
DJ
the
Shark
NFL.
starting for the Panthers.
Yeah.
You know,
Drafted him.
Fantasy.
That's what I'm saying. Is you might be doesn't mean that you're recruiting bad players. Those are still good players. It's the coaches that can make use of the 5-stars. Sometimes you have to recruit a couple of 3-stars and 4-stars to get to 5-stars. I think that I'm thinking about the Ed Orgeron era of LSU. He wasn't recruiting 5-stars until those 4-stars and 3-stars started to turn up, and then he was able to get some 5-stars.
Right.
I think Georgia wasn't always recruiting 5-stars until they started to really kick it up under Kirby, and then they started to win, and then the 5-stars started to fall into place. But they had to win over a lot of believers first, like Cedric Van Pran, the number one center in the country, to go out of state. But it wasn't like Georgia was coming off back-to-back national championships when they were recruiting him.
Correct.
So it's recruiting good players.
Coming off a loss from Bama for Devontae Smith.
Trust your own evals. Coaches need to trust their own evals. It's the same way that if you're behind the scenes of the rankings, you need to trust your own eyes.
Yep.
And these coaches, they have a lot of ways to get their hands on footage. They talk to a lot of people. They're going to get as much information as they can. It's like being a scout in the NFL. It's doing your homework on these kids.
I think that like this weekend, right? We got LSU versus Florida State.
Box office.
Can't wait.
Box office.
I'm very excited about.
I think this game is going to plateau one of these two teams throughout the season.
Right. I think that this is going to be one of those games that we talk about way when we get to week 9 of the season. Like, man, that Florida State and LSU game, right?
Yeah.
Especially coming off of how it ended last year.
Yes.
Following LSU over the years, following probably 80% of that roster that's playing for LSU right now. What's your expectations, man, for the LSU Tigers in year 2 with the Brian Kelly era? Jaden Daniels returning back for his second year at LSU, and they calling him a Heisman hopeful. What you think the LSU Tigers will do this year, man?
Yeah, well, I've been very lucky, very blessed to cover a lot of those kids on both those rosters at this point, which is, man, I cannot wait for Sunday.
Kids that come out of Louisiana,
those
on that
are
Florida State roster.
Those are some of my favorites. So it's
Vance.
It's very juicy. I think LSU is in a really good spot to have a really good season. I think the SEC is kind of a bit of a crapshoot because you can see it going a lot of different ways. No one wants to rule out the champs, but the champs have a whole new offense and a whole new quarterback. Alabama has a whole new offense and a whole new quarterback.
There's question marks all over the board at Alabama.
And LSU is kind of the team that has a lot returning, kind of like A&M. Kind of like A&M. So I kind of don't discount either one of those teams from having a really good season, but LSU is strong in a lot of areas where they haven't been strong in the past, and I think there's a couple of really strong areas. Their front seven is incredible. Their offensive line is in the best offensive line they've had in a half decade.
Which was a question mark coming into the season last year.
It's no longer a question mark. Left tackle.
Will Campbell, Lance Hurd, those guys, Emory Jones, they have completely improved that under Brad Davis and Frank Wilson and Brian Kelly and the defensive front seven. I mean, Omar Spates coming in from the Pac-12 to complement Harold Perkins, who, by the way, Harold Perkins, when he was in high school, was the kind of kid that was just the best player on the field. But just imagine that was your linebacker who played Wildcat quarterback and caught passes and was running a 4.49 on the field and did exactly what he did on defense at the high school level. It was such a sight to see. And then you're going to be without Mason for that first game, which makes me very nervous because I think Mason, man,
he disrupts so much.
I know you're close with him, G, and I am too. You made this kid who has such a bright future. He might have already been in the NFL, or if he's not close, he's getting ready for the NFL. Mm-hmm. He would have been the talk of the college football world last year. What he was as a high school player and the work that we see behind the scenes, and to take him out and just give him a year of getting angry, and then you told him he couldn't play in the game and get revenge for that week 1 game last year that they lost.
He got hurt with the first series?
First series.
I would really hate to be their LSU's week 2 opponent because I don't know if there's a prop bet out, but I'll take all the overs for Mason Smith that game. Yeah. They are deep. I mean, you got guys like Jacoby and Guillory and Wingo, and these are the important. The cornerback room makes me a little bit nervous.
The safety room is,
but the safety
you
room
got
is
Major
deep.
Burns and you got Greg Brooks. I mean, so you
those are veterans, and those are two locker room leaders, both of them, Major and Greg. And the running back room, people talk about maybe not deep, but
I think it's deep.
It's questionable.
I think it's deep.
Listen, if Logan Diggs stays healthy, first of all,
if John Emery can get himself together,
I can't help that. No, I can't.
Right?
I think
I can't do it. Y'all can do it. I can't do it.
Listen, think about it.
Can't do it.
Josh Williams, we saw what he can do last year as a walk-on running back. We know what John Emery could do if he can go to class.
Lil Kane's questionable,
right? We saw Logan Diggs did at Notre Dame, and we know his ability just from covering him through high school.
And that was a big recruiting win for Brian Kelly over these Tigers.
That's correct.
This is his guy, Logan Diggs, that they brought back.
Amani Goodwin, I think he's dealing with an injury though. Huh?
Right.
And then you got the freshmen, Trey Holly, Caleb Jackson, who had a really good fall camp, right? So I think it's a really deep room and a really talented room. And when you got a lot of good veterans mixed with a lot of young talent, I think that it's very, very like spread out. But when you talk about big backs, you talk about backs that shifty. I just think they have a lot of different dynamics in that running back room that, depending on the team they playing that week, could give a defense problem.
But here's the concern, right? The concern is we're comparing this backfield to potentially what we used to seeing from the backfield. Obviously, when the new regime with Brian Kelly, but when you compare it to previous regimes, it's not the same backfield when you was looking at.
We don't know that yet, though.
We
don't know that yet.
I'll say this.
We don't know that yet.
Yeah, those LSU teams had some Leonard Fournette to Darius Geis to Nick Brossette to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Yeah, it doesn't get much deeper than that.
Yeah.
If there's a position group that you want to be thin at or question, I like the way G put it. It's just a lot of young guys. With a couple of proven veterans. Running back is, we know what the value of running backs is, and I'm not saying that Logan Diggs isn't going to be a valuable part of this offense, because anyone who knows him from Rummel also knows the fantastic pass catcher out of the backfield. It's if there's a question mark, I'd rather it be the running back room than the offensive or defensive line, or the quarterback.
No doubt.
That wide receiver room is as good as anyone in the country.
It's good in the country.
And we're talking about Georgia just lost their starting running back, Branson Robinson. So they're going to have a change. Alabama is going to usher in a new running back this year. And it doesn't mean that it's just a question mark.
It's the unknown.
It's unknown across the board, from quarterback to O-line to receivers to the whole thing.
And that's a good point you made, because last year, running back was, probably one of the weak links on the team last year, and they won 11 games.
Correct.
So if that room can show up just a little bit more than they did last year, right? This team will be pretty good offensively.
I just think that when we talk about the LSU Tigers, if you think about a 20-year sample size, you just think about the amount of draftees that come out of the running back backfield. You're talking about Wade going back from Kevin Falk to the Joseph Addis to the Justin Vincent. You start just naming the list of backs that come into that. It's not that group. Now, can he be competitive? Can he be good? Absolutely, because we're in a different era running back. That era running back was a very much different group. When you start talking about Stephen Ridley's of the world, you start talking about the Jeremy Hills of the world, you start talking about the Leonard Fournettes of the world. The running back position is just a different era right now. So it's a lot of, I would say, unknowns, because I'm comparing it to what was drafted that came throughout LSU.
I will say this, though. Logan Diggs is going to get drafted one day.
Yes, I agree.
If John Emery ever got everything right off the field, that kid is one of the best backs. He's right there behind Leonard, and one of the best backs I've ever seen up close, especially from this state. And you're talking about Trey Holly. Trey Holly, one of the most productive high school football players ever.
All-time leading rusher, huh?
But correct. And he was, I think, when he had that record season, he was fourth in the country out of Union Parish High School. Give me a break.
Yes.
But we're talking about future draftees. Caleb Jackson's going to get drafted one day. He got injured as a senior, I think his first or second game of the season. But as a junior, I saw him in a playoff game against St. Thomas More, which you guys know is one of the more disciplined, hard-nosed defenses in the state. And Caleb Jackson ripped them. The combination of size, power, explosiveness, but also he's nifty, and he can catch the backfield. From what I heard from the coaches at LSU, that's a guy that might be an unknown now, but maybe next year when we're talking about their season for 2024,
having a different discussion.
You're talking about Caleb Jackson being one of the big pieces coming back to that backfield, and I do think, based on my evaluation of him in high school at Liberty, I think he'll be drafted one day.
And I think he'll get some opportunities this season, right? Yeah. Like when they played Grambling week 2, right? Yeah. We know. The Logan Diggs and the John Emerys and the Josh Williams of the world are not going to play that whole game.
Correct.
That's going to be a game where Trey Holler and a Caleb Jackson could get an opportunity to show the LSU faithful.
Correct.
What's to come in the future. And like I say, I think the last scrimmage they had, Caleb Jackson played phenomenal at running back. I think he had like a long 60-yard run, or maybe it was a swing pass or something like that. Broke like 3 or 4 tackles. So he's showing the style that the future is bright in that backfield. But I do want fast forward to that receiver room. Listen, I think Ohio State and LSU had the 2 best receiver rooms in the country. That's how I feel.
You think followed by USC coming third?
Possibly. But when you talk about LSU, I think one of the things that LSU lacked last year, they had the length, they had the big body athletic receivers. They was missing that dynamic person that could blow the top off the defense, that could make people miss in space. They didn't have an Aaron Anderson to the fold, baby.
Yes.
Sam, you familiar with Aaron Anderson? Scoring touchdowns on Friday night. You familiar with him in Berman Stadium? Adding Aaron Anderson to the fold to go with Malik Neighbors, Kyron Lacey, Brian Thomas, Mason Taylor. We forget about Mason Taylor as a pass catcher. Tight end.
Let me give you another name, Kamorian Pimpton.
Another one.
2 tight end sets.
Because Denbrock like to run those 2 tight end sets.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think they're going to have so many different weapons. It's going to be hard to game plan for this team. And when you add a dynamic person like Aaron Anderson, who could make one person miss and hit and take it 80, I think this makes this offense damn near unstoppable. The key is going to be, though, can Jaden Daniels take that next step like Joe Burrow did in his second year?
I completely agree, and Joe Burrows was famous because obviously look at the results. But looking back at Aaron's career at Carr, I mean, I personally believe he's the best football player to come through Carr, and I know that
over
people
Speedy?
Over Speedy?
And I say that over Speedy. I don't know.
It's arguable. It's arguable.
Listen, I brought it up when he graduated, and then I got a lot of craziness, and then people were like, "Okay, maybe."
Okay.
I'll say that. Over his career, Carr, I was talking about this with Shay Dixon at our LSU site the other day, and I said, when he was in the state championship as a freshman, he won them the game, and he nearly lost them the game because of his fumbles, and then he had the COVID year.
Right.
And you talk about what kids' actions speak louder than words, and especially Aaron, who doesn't use a lot of his words until he needs to. Mm-hmm. That kid worked every single day on his hands, and then by the time I remember seeing it at Natchitoches, as clear as day. Beating out not 1, not 2. He is 5'10", beating out 3 DBs.
I don't even know he's that tall.
I remember talking to Bryce going into his senior year, and he goes, "Bryce is one of the smartest, most creative guys." I mean, and he texts me and goes, "What do you think of Aaron?" I said, "I think I'm going to make him. I think I'm going to be the first, analyst to make him a 5-star recruit." He goes, "He's only 5'10". And I was like, bet Bryce, gotcha.
Right.
That kid. I mean, him and Destin as the 1-2 punch in Carr is
yes.
I mean, we just talked about Racy earlier. We're talking about Speedy. I mean, that combination was as good as it gets. Aaron I thought he was as good as a special teams return specialist as he was as a receiver, but that's not to diminish how great he was as a receiver because he was a crafty route runner. The only DB I really ever saw slow him down individually was Wallace Foster, who was the son of a coach and one of the most technically sound DBs. Again, a freshman impact player for Jerry Phillips at Easton.
Right.
But what Aaron, the consistent improvement in his hands, being 5'10" and able to jump, 30, 38, 40 inches in the air, the twitch in space, the ability to make you miss. And really, I mean, Aaron is as tough as it gets. That's when you think about New Orleans tough. Aaron is exactly what you are thinking of.
He's improvising.
Exactly, and that's the kind of area that LSU is. I remember talking to someone whose son is on the team, and they're saying, I think they're just kind of lacking in that special teams department.
Mm-hmm. Not anymore.
You could not have found a better hole.
No.
To fill it with.
If he fills the shoes, which I believe he will. If that's the question mark on the Tigers this year, the special teams department, the punt return and kick or return department. We know Aaron Anderson can pretty much, if you miss a tackle,
you will miss a tackle.
Y'all not going to like y'all special teams beating the following week. because it's about to be a highlight reel. If he can just be focused, not that obviously he can play offense, but if he can make the plays there, I think the Tigers are. I don't want to compare them to the 2019 season, but it's shaping up to have a similar makeup. If they can, obviously, if they can win week 1, Florida State's going to be a real test. Because Florida State got some dogs of their own, but if they could make this. If they could win in Orlando, this is a big-time matchup to me going in week 1. To me, this matchup here sets a real plateau of how college football is going to be shaped up toward this college playoff shape-up. Obviously, I think that LSU can, even if they lost this game, I still think they have opportunities because of the conference they play in. And Florida State really doesn't have that kind of opportunity where if Florida State lost, no disrespect, the ACC does not have the teams that allows you to get back into that top 4 playoff, even if you win the conference, because it's just not studied this year. Between them and Clemson, that's pretty much it. After that, it's just we don't know what we're talking about. But it's shaping up to where when you look at the Tigers this year, man, the light's gonna be bright this upcoming weekend, and if they could pull off this victory and get revenge on Florida State, which I'm neutral in this game, but I tell you one thing, man, it's gonna set off college football off in the right direction. It's like a grand opening of college football, and I'm just so excited looking forward to this matchup. But you said something special, man. You say Aaron Aronson probably one of the best.
Best.
Come out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
Question: out of covering kids for almost a decade now in the state of Louisiana, in terms of recruit 5-star, who you put at the highest of the ranking?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I've been asked this a couple of times, and I feel
guys
like
come to mind.
And I do feel like I kind of, sometimes I stop myself from updating the list because
I'm not asking you to go back 20 plus. I'm talking about from maybe 2012 to now, somewhere around in there.
That's my era. Yeah. I think it's gonna be Derek Stingley Jr. And I think that 11 interceptions over Leonard. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with it.
11 interceptions in 11 games is one of the more unheard of. I mean, you've seen this with when Kelvin Joseph was. I mean, when Greedy was in high. It's really hard to take. It's really easy rather to take a 4-star or a 5-star DB out of the game. Derek Stingley didn't allow them to at any point after the 11 interceptions. They moved him to safety.
Yeah.
They started using him on offense, and we're talking about the same thing as Aaron. He let him return kicks and punts, and it would be funny that you could pick a Dunham game, and he would score. It was the same way you felt about Aaron, and I think there's just so few kids where it's like you don't want to say this in a way where if you're going to see a 4 or 5 star, you're expecting to see it make some plays.
Correct.
Usually a sign if you're able to get taken out, and those guys were you bring your popcorn every single week for those kind of guys, and Derek Stingley. I mean, I don't say it. I say it pretty confidently, but Leonard really, he piqued my love for this city because I mean, not only was he just the best, never seen a human look like this, but when you talk to him after the game, he's an incredible person.
No doubt.
I saw him in the airport a couple of weeks ago with his kids, and he's the same Leonard. He's still a 16-year-old kid that gave away his MVP trophy to the state champs, and you were like, how do you again, you applaud the maturity for kids that understand it like that.
Yeah, I think I would have to go with, from 2012 to now, I'm torn between Joe McKnight and Speedy Noel.
Right.
The things I seen Joe McKnight do, and when I say that, I'm talking about with my own eyes. I'm not talking about watching film or anything. I'm talking about up close and personal, seeing them do this on a Friday night. And I think Joe McKnight and Speedy Noel, if you talk about from 2012 to now, those two guys,
I got a guy that
arguably that's the two best I've seen.
I got a guy that you will put in that mix.
Who?
Puka Williams.
I stand corrected.
Puka magic, baby.
So look, I would put Puka before both of them, but the reason why I said Joe and Speedy because when you see Joe McKnight and Speedy with their shirt off,
Joe just got the
they look like they going to the NFL.
Yeah.
When you see Puka with his shirt off, you just see Puka walking around.
Just Puka.
You would never think that man, this kid is one of the best players in the country.
That's a badass
until he laced him up.
Yeah.
Until he laced him up. So,
talk about a dead leg, boy.
That playoff run is. Yeah. I mean, that probably is the best playoff run.
The best playoff run I've seen.
Who else has a nickname for the 5 or 6 game stretch to the Superdome? I mean,
for real,
Puka Magic. It was a phenomenon in this state.
Yes.
And you heard teams from across the. Is he really that good? I was like,
yes.
Dude, it's not an accident that they're winning this games. Like,
no.
But he was a kid. I thought that people didn't talk about a whole lot until his senior year.
Correct.
Because Puka didn't really go to camps like that. He kind of stayed out the way.
He almost got the offer from Jaluk, but I think he had to leave because his grandmother went to the hospital. So it's like it's a completely unforeseen, unforgiving situation that probably hindered him from getting the offer because I'm pretty sure he clocked like a 4.4 sub 4.440, but he didn't get to work out and it delayed his recruitment with LSU.
Well, I remember the first ever camp he ever went to. I took him to it at Tulane. That's when CJ was the head coach at Tulane and Coach Dave Johnson was there. His first time ever going to a camp. This was going into his 9th grade year. Mm-hmm. He ran a 4.3. Right? And they offered him on the spot. He didn't even have varsity film yet. And I want to say he went to maybe like one Rivals camp after that, and he didn't even perform all of the drills at the Rivals camp. I don't even think he did the one-on-ones. I think he might have did like maybe the first 10 minutes of the Rivals camp, and then he like said his leg was hurt, and he just went and sat down. He just wasn't that kind of kid that wanted to do camps and just be available,
right,
if you will. And I think that probably hurt his recruiting, like, because he didn't go camps at schools.
Correct.
He didn't do that, and I think that was a big reason why schools were leery of offering him, because I mean he is 5'7" and some change. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I do want to ask you this, Sam. Give me a name on LSU roster that nobody's talking about that will make some type of impact on that LSU team this year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of tip my hand a little bit with Kamori and Pimpton, but you mentioned Denbrock is, we have Jason Taylor's son Mason is the famed tight end, and Mason is a really gifted receiver, and Kamori and Pimpton is a kid from right outside of Dallas Fort Worth. I saw him in the All-American game last January. I also got to see him at the Red Stick Jamboree on Friday night in Baton Rouge. This kid is about 6'6", 220-ish pounds, standing next to Shelton Sampson, who y'all have seen is 6'4", 190 pounds, is a grown man, and he makes Shelton look like his little brother. I've heard a lot of good things that this guy is, he was kind of raw coming out of high school, but he's fit right into the LSU weight program, making a lot of plays during scrimmages. And listen, you're talking about one of the strengths of this team is not only the talent of the pass catchers, but the deep talent of the pass catchers. And if you're looking there's not a lot of names off the radar that I can really throw at you because a lot of these names are now household names. I'm not going to surprise you with Malik Neighbors or something like that. But Kamori and Pimpton might be, Mason Taylor did it as a freshman. LSU's not afraid to play you if you're able to play, and it might just be a name to stash away.
I'm torn between these two guys. Javian Toviano. I love everything about that kid. He is, in my opinion, just being around the program in the summer and going to some of the practices doing fall camp. I think he might be, and this ain't no disrespect to none of the freshmen, but I think he might be the most mature out of all of the freshmen.
1,000,000%.
The goes about it with this business-like approach, catching on to the defense really, really well. And I think that with the secondary being sort of a question mark, I could see the secondary having some little inconsistencies.
Okay.
A little bit early on, and Toviano kind of getting some opportunities, and him living up to the bill of making some plays here and there to help LSU win a few games. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and be what Harold Perkins was, right? But I think Toviano is somebody to look out for this season that could possibly get everybody like kind of excited about him and his future going forward. The other guy I was going to say was Savion Jones, but Savion kind of started coming on last year.
Yeah.
So people probably kind of know about Savion. He's going to be starting at the edge.
Yeah, if you follow St. James and you
people kind of know Savion's probably
incredible senior season.
Yeah. People, I think people kind of know about Savion, but I think Toviano is somebody that I'm kind of looking forward to seeing
To that point, he started as a freshman for Arlington Martin out there in Arlington. As a sophomore, I saw him in his week 1 game, and this is how we talk about exposure. I made his profile in Cowboy Stadium. He lined up against Jatavian Sanders, and then he lined up against Billy Bowman, and then he broke up passes against both of them over and over. And of course, Billy caught a couple on him. Jatavian caught one on him. This is a sophomore. He was 6'1", 180 pounds as a sophomore. His brother played ball somewhere in the state of Texas. So he's the younger brother. You talked about his mentality. This is a grown man mentality. He's extreme. One of the sharpest young men I've ever been, fortunate enough to cover. And the way they used him at Arlington Martin, I mean, they let him be the running back. They let him play corner. They let him play safety. I think he's playing in the nickel a lot at LSU. Toolsy, smart, driven. I have I think I'm a G 100%. That's a freshman that I could see playing in that secondary very quickly.
And you got to think about this. Major Burns has been having a lot of durability issues since he's been at LSU. I mean, he's wearing the neck collar, the horse collar to protect his neck. They like to take Greg and move him to the nickel. And I think something else that bodes well for Toviano, the versatility. You can put him at safety, and you can put him at nickel. And you can kind of put him at outside corner if you want to.
Plays outside corner a ton in high school.
Right. And so Matt House and Steeples and them, right, they love that versatility that Toviano brings and his maturity and the way he approaches the game. So I could see him getting the opportunity this season, whether it's, against an Ole Miss, whether it's against Auburn, whether it's against Florida State on Sunday. I think he gets an opportunity at some point and makes the most of it, and we start getting excited about Toviano.
What do you think about Terrence?
Welch. I think LaTerrence is going. I know he's running with the tools. He'll be the first guy in at outside corner if Alexander and Deuce Chestnut goes down. They need a breather. LT will be one of the first guys up to rotate in. I think LT had a really, really good fall camp. I went to 3 practices, and I thought LT body looks better. He's moving better than he did last year coming off the ACL. So he's
health has always been the issue with LT.
And he had a hell of a spring game. Spring game.
He's a ball player every time he's on the field.
He's nicked up his senior year a little bit, and obviously
a lot. We were talking about when he came back. Yes. When he came back, though, he always made plays and in the biggest spots.
Yeah. I just think that he's gonna, when the opportunity presents itself, I think he's gonna take the stage. But obviously, this guy is not gonna be, he's a household name or somebody. I think Kyron Lacey is just posed to just have a big season.
I don't want to be biased.
Yes, I think that he just posed to have a big season. I just think that he's ready for this stage. If you've been watching him in fall camp, just the plays he's making, number 2 is coming. And I just think that obviously you got Brian Thomas, obviously you got Malik Neighbors, but number 2 is the guy that I got to highlight on this year because his ceiling is just like, if he gets the kind of coverage that he wants to get, it's a highlight reel. He's going to put you on center stage, and that's the thing that it's going to fit well to what they want to do as a team. He's going to me, number 2 is going to make that play that like, okay, we've been kind of like, we ain't moving the offense well. You find number 2, this whole situation is about to change.
Right.
I just think that Kyron Lacey becomes a household name. Obviously, if you followed him, high school like G has, and obviously, like I've been following him when he was at, UL. But being on this stage,
and to your point, Cortez Hankton has raved about him, the person that he has become from spring to now versus what he was a year ago around this time, maturity-wise, just understanding to have better practice habits. I think that was a big issue for him last year. At UL, you can kind of get away with not practicing the right way because you're the best person in the room.
He knows the best person in the room.
When you come to LSU, you're not the best, but you're not the best person in the room. There's other guys in that room that's just as good as you, if not better than you, and you have to come with good practice habits every day. If you don't, you're going to have a game like he did against Texas A&M, when he had some crucial drops. And I think that's something that resonated with him, that got his mind right. And I think you're right, bro. I think Kyron is on the cusp of having a big, big season. Another question for you, Sam. What's a guy in high school right now that nobody's talking about, but at season's end, a lot of people are going to be talking about?
Any specific part of the state or anywhere can I hit?
Don't matter.
Oh, man.
Got to be Louisiana, though.
It's got to be. Hey, that's easy. All right. Let me give you Davian Jackson out there in Westgate. He's a 2025. He's going to play receiver this year.
Okay.
He worked in the backfield last year with I forgot I'm gonna
Westgate always
Coach
gotta
Ryan
sleep out
Antoine's gonna Coach Antoine's gonna kill me. I think it's Gordon is in the backfield, but Davian Jackson is as a freshman. They said you thought Kayshawn Booty was tough. Wait till you see this kid. So they have not tempered their expectations with Davian. He's already got an offer from Tulane and Georgia Tech. I saw what he did in his jamboree. He's basically a power slot. And he is physical. He's got incredible hands, great body control. He can get up after it. He's got a nice vertical jump. And he's just a junior, so they got a young squad. And Jabari Antoine and Davian Jackson, and they got a couple more youngsters that we're going to start hearing more all over. They think that they're going to be state championship bound, and if they are, I think Davian Jackson will be someone whose recruitment will take off in the process potentially.
Give me a high school team that nobody's talking about right now that we'll be talking about when playoff time comes.
Has anyone talked about the Car Cougars on the show? I mean, come on. I mean, listen.
Yeah, the Shannon Shaw spokesperson right there.
Well, I know, but here. Well, I'm in a safe place. I don't think they're being picked to win the Catholic League, and I don't have to do that anymore.
Surprisingly.
I don't have. But here's the thing: they are young, but they might be the most talented. I've seen some. I'm a star chaser, right? That's what I do.
Right.
Some of the most talented teams I've seen, and it starts with Carr and Destrehan. U-High.
Westgate.
Catholic. The Westgate. They're starting to get some dudes back up north. Opelousas, Captain Shreve. A couple of these John Everett has some young guys.
Everett got a couple
peppering
guys
in that class with all the schools in Jefferson Parish closing down.
Yes.
But I'll tell you all that on cars. Guys on the defensive line and in the receiving corps, it's like their bread and butter. And in the secondary, and just seeing them, I'm spoiled. I got to see them in the spring game. I got to see them in their preseason scrimmage. But the youngsters are going to be not only they're going to be playmakers this year, be doing it for 2 or 3 more years, and you start giving them some experience. That's a really high ceiling for not only this year potentially, but as a learning series. But next year and then the year after, they're going to be the favorites in the Catholic League.
I'm going with Opelousas High School, and preferably because of the division they're in. I was looking at where they fall at in that division. I think they're in non-select division. I can't remember, but they don't have any juggernauts in that division that they're in. Yeah. So I feel like Opelousas could possibly be a team that we start talking about come playoff time that might be in the quarterfinals or the semifinals, right?
Yeah.
I think Coach Jimmy has done a fantastic job taking over that program and building some confidence in those kids, and I think they made it to the second round last year or something like that. So they have some star-studded kids on that team, and they have some kids on that team that I think we're going to find out about. My other one is Holy Cross. I'm not saying Holy Cross is going to go to the dome, right? But they won, 3 games last year? 4 games, something like that? I think Holy Cross has a winning record this year. I can see them going 6-4, maybe 7-3. I think Coach Wadney is bringing a level of discipline to that team. I think he's catering his defense and his offense to what they do best. And look, when you talk about somebody like Kobe Young and Cross Johnson, if he's healthy, along with that the quarterback, I forgot his name. He's coming back. He started last year.
Good quarterback.
Right. The O-line play with Wadney's.
His young playmakers in there.
Yeah, Wadney's forte is the offensive line. So I think that O-line will be better. And when you got 2 playmakers like Kobe Young and Cross Johnson with a veteran quarterback coming back, I think that Holy Cross team is going to be really good. Then you added somebody like Tommy Connors, who came from Shaw, who's a defensive-minded guy. You got Chris Thompson, who has been a college coach at Nicholls State for the last 6-7 years. This is his second year at Holy Cross. I just think when you add all those components, Holy Cross should have a winning record this year. So I'm going to go with Holy Cross and Opelousas High School.
I like those. John Everett.
Man, come on, you biased, man. What about Higgins?
We're not in the conversation.
They're not fielding a team this year.
We're not in the conversation. We may go down to 3 years sooner or later. Listen, I love my guy Clifford. I love Clifford, but we ain't there.
Right.
I love him.
Right.
Love him to death, but
and look, they ain't making no better for him. Helicopter closed down, and John Everett get all the studs.
Of course.
Now that. Speaking of that, that's a sleeper in the state. I feel like gonna take a lot of people by storm this year. Darnell O'Quinn.
Oh yeah.
Bro,
Yeah.
that kid could play.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's a little slim,
A little slight.
but
The
when you talk
playmaker.
about twitchiness,
Yeah.
getting in and out of his brace, high pointed, being able to run, he got verified track times. Darnell O'Quinn, if they can get him the ball, which Eric's quarterback's pretty solid.
He's solid.
I think Darnell O'Quinn will be somebody that when we look back week 9, week 10, is getting some steam for a lot of schools starting to recruit him, because I think right now he only got maybe 3 or 4 offers.
Yeah, well, you know what? This is what we're talking about. A senior eval kid. He's a ball player. He's a little slight. You watch the McNeeses, the Southeasterns, the Nichols. They know where to find talent. They're gonna be watching him, and there'll be a lot of eyes on Errett. He's gonna have a lot of opportunities. Errett, not only they're gonna use Wardell Mack on offense, so they got a really good running back. They're gonna need Darnell, and I've seen him do it in 7-on-7 settings. I've seen him do it at a couple of Errett practices. This kid is always making a circus.
And
cat
before
or
he got
something
hurt
crazy.
last year for Helen Cox, I think he only played 4 or 5 games last year. But if you go look at his film from his junior year, bro, he was balling.
Yeah. Too bad it couldn't be a Hurricane.
Before we go though, man, we got to do Sam's favorites, man. Sam's favorites. Here we go. Favorite football player of all time.
Oh.
No matter what level.
I grew up and I loved Jonathan Vilma.
That's a good one. Saint.
I loved him when he was a Jet.
He brought us a Super Bowl.
Oh, he loved him when he was a Jet.
He led the NFL in tackles with the Jets.
He did.
And then we traded for him.
And then they traded him, and that's just kind of the organization I grew up
They went from
for.
4-3 to 3-4.
Couldn't fit.
Come on down here
Because Rex Ryan
took over.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Favorite movie of all time.
Oh my God. I'll go with The Godfather. I think the cliche one.
Good one. I like
Only
that.
because I just recently watched it and I can't think.
Good one. Favorite sneaker of all time.
I gotta go with my Dunks.
Good one. Favorite artist of all time. Music artist.
Music artist. I love the Foo Fighters.
I never heard of Foo Fighters.
They like Dave Grohl.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. All right.
Different. See, he taking it back though. He taking it back from most people we have guests will have on. They'll have some out of the modern era.
Oh yeah, no, I'm living in my own world, man. I live in my own world. Man,
they Foo Fighters.
I was driving with one of my coworkers who was 26 years old, and he was like, "Man, Sam, your Spotify is crazy." He's like, it went from Frank Sinatra to Blink-182 to Drake, and I'm like, man, that's what happens when you're old. You just like a lot of different songs. I don't know.
Yeah, he in the future. The baby.
It's what history is like, man.
Favorite place to visit.
Man, I love California so much. Really anywhere in California, that's my go-to place. But now my new favorite place to visit is back home on Long Island because my new niece, and she is a little flower of my world.
Gotcha. Favorite coach of all time, whether it was somebody you watched growing up, or maybe it might have been a coach that made an impact on you.
I hope he listens. I want to say Robert Valdez, former coach of West St. John. I mean, does anyone not love him?
Coach Valdez. We gotta get him
my
a show.
dog. That's
yeah,
my dog.
he's just a great guy. I'll give him that. Only because Bryce is still coaching the high school. I can't mess. I don't want to upset Jerry. I can't be current. Valdez is retired from the game. He's a grandpa now. I'm sure he could use some pep.
Favorite comedian of all time.
Tough.
That's
Tough.
This is also a whole one with different eras too, right?
Yeah.
Who did Olivia Munn just marry? That guy's kind of up on my idols right now.
I know she should date
John
Aaron Rodgers.
Mulaney. I can go John Mulaney.
John Mulaney?
I mean, maybe not all time though.
I like Olivia
No, it
Munn.
don't have to be
yeah.
your favorite.
I'll say Sam's favorite at the moment is John Mulaney. Kind of a moment.
John Mulaney.
You got one for him?
I don't. I'm thinking about one. Sam he listens to if you one of these new modern kids, what it is, Matt Riff. It's all over the internet right now. Mm-hmm. But Sam he listen to who that is? The guy.
Tip of your tongue.
I think it's Burr. I can't think of the first name. It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't get it off.
An artist?
No, it's a comedian.
Oh, comedian.
Oh, Bill Burr?
Yes.
I recently, dude, I'm just like out of touch with like modern, like someone just told me who that was. Like I had to like Google who that was.
I found that in the last year.
I also like.
He funny?
I saw his last I saw his last stand up on Netflix.
Right.
And I found it funny, especially when he started talking about the WNBA. Listen, but I'm passionate about women's sports, but the way he was going in, I was just like, I can't fault him. I couldn't fault him. I couldn't fault him for how he made what his position was and how he made it funny.
Right.
Like he's like, hey, I understand what he's saying, but he made it funny. And they were just like, I couldn't watch the whole thing because the whole thing doesn't really pertain to the things I'm interested in. But when he would start talking about the WNBA and why it is the way it is, I couldn't stop watching.
Come on, it was funny like that?
Oh, it was funny. It was funny. He said, nobody watched the games.
If you wasn't doing sports media, what would Sam Spiegelman be doing with his life?
Right in the living section. Tom's picking you.
Yeah, man. I love arguing, so I think I probably would have maybe stayed on that law path. Like, but I would have had to do it earlier in life because, man, once you got a taste of like doing the media stuff, I really enjoyed it, and that's what I said. That's why I stuck with it. But
you'd have been defense prosecutor. What you'd have been?
Shit, man. Whatever made me the most money paycheck, man. I would have been working my butt off harder in school and getting it done with early. If now that now kids can graduate high school early and stuff, I'd be like, oh, I can get out of this and move ahead. Let's do it.
Definitely been a defense attorney. Working for the state don't pay.
Yeah. I was thinking like I'd be like a divorce attorney or something. Like, man, people get divorced every day.
A lot of civil suits.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, I know one thing. They make a lot of money.
They make a lot of money.
They retainers.
For real. That retainer ain't no joke.
Hey, I want to be like one of those attorneys. Like, I'm just like I'm Apple's attorney. Like,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Damn retainer like $100K.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sam say he likes to argue. Don't argue with the kids on Twitter.
Oh no.
Don't get in the debate. They have no recollection of anything. It's like just to hear them speak, and I be trying to have one of those for them. I'm trying to let them in the conversations. They just can't get here.
I'm a muter.
It's a lose-lose.
It's a lose-lose. Social media is not the way to communicate.
Nah, it's a lose-lose.
I'm with you, Sam, because these kids today, the things they say, especially when it comes to rankings, when they want to rank people, when they want to rank athletes, even the athletes are starting to bother me. Even if you're under 30, if you're a player, I don't want to hear you. I just don't. Like this, just the conversations when you hear them. Regardless of a sport, it don't matter if it's football, basketball, music. It does not matter. When you hear them, like when you just hear them, you be like, "Who? Who you got up there the whole time?" Like, just say that's your favorite,
right?
And
exactly.
Cool. But when you get them, it's like they are no historian of the music, sports, or comedy. It does not matter. It's like they're not. It's like to them, this all started in 2000.
Sure. Well, like, for them, it did start in 2000.
Yeah, it did. But that's like for me, for example, right? If somebody asks me, man, who's some of the best receivers of all time? I'm not just gonna start with Terrell Owens and Randy Moss because that's the era I watch. I'm gonna dig a little back and see, okay, there's Steve Largent, there's Don Hudson, right? There's some guys who played this game.
Well, look, I will say to some of the kids' defense, they need to probably articulate themselves better and say, my era, this is my favorite.
Yeah.
I would say that Randy Moss probably is better than those guys, though.
Yeah.
I'm just messing with you.
I can't speak on guys. I can't speak, like, we be talking about the NBA stuff sometimes. They start talking about Bill Russell and all. I'm like, bro, I could go off of some of the classic games I watched on ESPN.
Like the black and white film
on
ESPN2 after midnight.
I didn't watch that. I'm not gonna ever put Bill Russell in my top.
It's like putting Jim Brown in your best argument for running back. It's like, no disrespect, but I didn't watch the game in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
Now
Walter Payton, like I didn't watch those guys. I just saw highlights and stuff on NFL films.
Now, I'll put them in my conversation. Obviously, my era was the Emmitt Smith and the Barry Sanders, and then the Damian Thomas and the Marshall Falks, in that group. The Terrell Davises of the world. Terrell Davis ain't like top 10, but he won an MVP. That era, right? But when you hear them speak, the things they say, you be like, Who? Come on now. No. It's like, y'all, do y'all have a study for stats and statistics and in numbers and
They not thinking before they talk.
No, not at all. It's just like the stuff they say. You be like, who? And then you be like, listen, the guy's having a good start to his career. The guy's on the right path. If he can keep it up, he gonna move some people out the way.
And look, the times we living in now, everybody the GOAT.
Yes.
I'm so damn tired of seeing that damn emoji. Listen, like, God damn, how y'all call everybody a GOAT? Come on, man.
Guy have a great season. Oh, he the
Come
GOAT.
on, man.
You be like, who?
Come on, man.
You be like, it has to, I don't know. Sometimes some things just need some level of context, and it's getting out of proportion. It's just like, come on, no.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Man, I appreciate you coming on a FanvVew podcast, Sam. Man, we definitely got to get you back on in the near future. Football season is upon us.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I'm gonna see you at some games on Friday nights.
Yes, you are.
And probably some LSU games, maybe, huh?
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Big news coming out tomorrow down there in Acadiana. Dominic McKinley will be announcing where he'll be spending his next 3 to 4 years. Some people saying Oklahoma, some people saying Texas A&M.
Some people saying Austin.
You have a slight few people saying LSU. We'll see tomorrow. I'm pretty sure Sam's going to be all on top of that. I'm going to be on top of it from afar. But we'll see. We'll see, man. We'll see, man. Appreciate you coming on the podcast, though, Sam, man, and everything you do, man. I know you, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, one of the hardest working, if not the hardest working man in media, man. I don't know how your wife puts up with the long days and the long nights, man. I don't know how she do it.
You could ask her. I don't know. She left town, man. She might be saying goodbye. Who even knows? But I appreciate you guys having me. You guys, like I said, you guys do an excellent job. And,
no doubt.
For you, anything, man. I got you.
No doubt. Appreciate you.
Listen, everybody get subscribed. FanvVew Podcast if you're on YouTube. FanvVew Podcast if you're on IG. It's FanvVew Podcast if you're on Facebook. It's FanvVew NOLA if you're on Twitter. Also TikTok, FanvVew Podcast. Don't forget to follow G-Sportz if you're on YouTube, if you're on IG, if you're on Twitter. I cannot help you if you're underneath the rock. We all got a little thing called devices here.
Yeah.
You got to like, comment, share, subscribe, watch, tell a friend, tell a friend. It's the best damn podcast in the state, baby.
Can't stop, won't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop. FanvVew Podcast. We out.
Step Construction is here for you with a brand new offer. We now provide affordable storage sheds. Stop wasting your money on overpriced storage units and portable containers. Step Construction can provide you with a custom shed that will fit your budget and storage needs. So contact Step Construction today at 504-340-5809 for your own personal quote. Let us help you take the next step at Step Construction.
It's DatBoyFred, host of FanvVew Podcast. Tune into the NOTN app, weekdays, 3:30 for the FanvVew Podcast. Go to NewOrleansTalkNetwork.com to watch more episodes of FanvVew Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch.